tell us a little bit about how you became to be Luthier?
Where did it all begin?
Yeah.
Okay, so very first days were high school project. So a lot of people build things in high school and
Pencil cases and
all that sort of stuff. For me, it was a graphics project. Designed an ergonomic guitar back in the early 80s and so forth. Weird looking thing it was, but I designed it and bought a neck and did as a lot of people do, sort of constructed this thing. Didn't have to build it, but I was compelled to build this thing. I've been playing for a few years and so forth, and did lots of things wrong. So this is pre-internet, pre-books. There was nothing to work by there at all, apart from I was fortunate to have a teacher lend me a Stratocaster over a weekend and sort of go home and measure a few things up and make some notes about how this and that went together. And many years later I figured out what he'd actually given me over the weekend, and this is a 16 or 17 year old. It was a 1964 Stratocaster, pre-CBS Stratocaster. Wow. He said, look after it over the weekend, don't take it on the school bus, your parents have to pick you up, drop it back on Monday, all that sort of stuff.
Wow.
It was obviously in the original case and all that sort of stuff, 3-tone sunburst type thing, 64 Strat. Wow. No idea what I had as a kid.
Do you still have the measurements?
No, it's all the standard sort of things. Yeah. But so I did that sort of stuff and built a few other instruments after that through into my early 20s. And it was around about, I was around 27, 28, and I wanted to build a jazz guitar. I wanted to build an L5 jazz guitar, and I approached Philip Carson Crickmore, one of Melbourne's and one of Australia's great acoustic guitar makers, and he was offering courses for that type of thing, and it was just financially outside of what I could do at the time. And he was building jazz guitars at the time, and I had actually gone into jewellery making and gold and silversmithing, so I was really good with metal work, working on tiny scales. Detail, really important detail, which makes things like inlay work and all that sort of stuff a cinch. That's just second nature, that sort of stuff. So that's a bit unfair, having come from that side of things and being able to work at that sort of scale, I know, but I couldn't do that sort of course through him. It was too expensive, but he had these L5s that he was building, and he needed some tail pieces and some brackets and bits and pieces made up that you couldn't buy at the time. So I was like, yeah, I can build those, I'll make those for you. So I made these tail pieces up for him and side brackets and so forth, and then I stayed. I didn't go away. I stayed and worked with him on Fridays and Saturdays for 2 years. Okay. I just did all the grunt work, and it was acoustic guitar making. Yeah. It was making internal bracing and gluing things in place, and I didn't get to carve any necks or do any of the really important stuff, but I watched this master at work, and Phil is a really particular maker, and like if you had something not quite right, he'd just bin it and say, get another bit of timber out and make it absolutely perfect. But he enjoyed the fact that I understood it wasn't just down to millimetres, it was down to fractions of millimetres, and it just had to be so. He really enjoyed that side of things. So I learnt a lot just being able to see all this sort of stuff and working and having the pressure on to do these things in a really specific way. And these weren't toys, these were things that were being sold to the public. It had to be just right. And from there, fast forward a few more years, kept on building a few things myself at home, some of my own designs and so forth that I'll be featuring fairly soon as well. It had more of a 50s, I want to say Jetsons kind of sort of theme going on. No basses at this sort of stage, but it was all bolt-on type neck guitars. And I was working at NMIT as a TAFE teacher. And I had a head of what was the performing arts at the time, Peter Lambert, come along and sort of go, I hear you make guitars and basses and all that sort of stuff. Can I come around and have a look? So he came around to my place and sort of went, oh my God, we've got to build a course out of this thing. Let's do this sort of stuff and let's do a guitar course. And I was like, okay, yeah, I suppose we can do that. Before I knew it, dates were set, and we were about to, people were enrolling, and it just had to happen. Yeah, and I knew what I was doing and all that stuff. When was this? That was around about 5 years ago now. Okay. So, I'd just been building for my own pleasure, and I'd already accumulated a lot of instruments at home. There are a lot there. And had bought plenty of classic instruments and all that sort of stuff. So I knew what I was doing, and I'd already elevated my building skills up quite high. The course, we got the course going, and it developed its own life and all that sort of stuff. And from there, of course, lots of building, getting my own builds. I probably put around about sort of 10 to 12 instruments together of my own make a year at this sort of stage.
Okay.
And you consider some of them are anywhere between sort of 60 to maybe 120 hours on an instrument. So it's quite time consuming on top of what was full-time work back then. And also running this course, and you're getting maybe 24 people through a year, and it was lots of making. And it meant speed. You just get better at whatever it is that you're doing when you're actually getting those sort of numbers.
So many parallels with actually playing. Studying under a master luthier, getting good lessons, practice, putting in time.
Yeah.
No matter what you're doing, there's similar parallels.
That 10,000 hours theory of
it's there. Yeah,
you got
to learn from a good teacher, and you got to put the time in yourself.
Yeah. So from there, of course, it's evolved into my own making of these types of things, and it was really through Peter Lambert that I deviated. I've gone to the dark side of the bass side, where it's gone away from making. 6-string guitars for me. I help a lot of people build those types of things, but what I became very frustrated with 6-string guitar making was that the guitarists are really conservative mob. They're like, is it a Strat, is it a Tele, is it a Les Paul, what is it? Bass players are not like that. They're like, check out my stuff, man. I've got this really cool thing, it's the latest stuff. So the shtick is really different. They're like, they're proud of being different. They want to be different. They don't want to be a sheep. They want to be something or other else.
And also, I think the bass is the kind of instrument where you can vary quite a lot tonally and still fit into a musical situation. Whereas, musically, you kind of are after really a Strat or a Les Paul single coil or a humbucker or a Tele kind of thing. Like, those differences are huge. Whereas the difference between these pickups and single coil pickups maybe isn't quite so big in the context of a band, because a lot of those frequencies are masked by kick drum and guitar, stuff like that. So like I say this all
you're
the
working
time,
with the drummer, aren't you?
I say this all the time, like, it's only bass. People out there fun here, and in the context of the band, really it's the bass that.
Isn't it funny? I go and see bands now, and I'm listening to the bass players. I'm going, how's that working in there, and where's that sitting?
So as long as that fundamental bassness is in there, I think there's definitely room to play with more than guitar, perhaps.
So bass is a young instrument. It is. It's only been since the 50s. Now guitars go way back beyond that, and the DNA for the bass was the double bass and cello type instruments and things like that. So it's in a high state of evolution at the moment, and as a luthier that's really interesting.
Exciting,
so you're not blocked into going, it's got to be a Strat derivative or something like that. It can be virtually anything at the moment. It could be anything you can think of, and it's going to evolve a lot more over the next little while as well. I'm not sure it will. It hasn't gone anywhere near plateauing at all. So again, as a luthier, that's a great challenge, to think about what it is you're making instead of just going into just on the treadmill, just going to make more of those kinds of things. It's wonderful. Really, really good with that type of thing. So I've really evolved into doing a lot more of this type of build. I do have some 6-string guitars that I've got sitting in the rack that need finishing and so forth, but they've sort of been neglected.
Well, I'm glad you have come to the dark side. It's good for the bass community for sure.
It is. It's fun. It's
and
fun.
I think what we'll do is we'll do a video where we demonstrate, talk about a couple of your basses in depth, because we haven't really done that. But we'll definitely talk about this guy and this one, maybe a couple of other ones, and what makes your designs unique to you.
A little bit different with that type of thing. Sure.
We'll do that.